Taylor, tell me about the crash.
So on May 25th, I was coming down St. Margaret's Bay Road from this direction behind me towards the Rotary. So I'm doing a pretty good speed coming on this downhill section, probably about 45 or 50 kilometers an hour. And as I was coming down, there's a left-hand turning lane right here, and there was a car waiting to turn left. And just before I came through these little driveway sections here, the car waiting to turn made that left-hand turn right in front of me. I might have had 2 or 3 seconds to react, and I ended up sort of T-boning the car that turned left.
It's been a while now, but I was traveling from Peggy's Cove towards Tantallon. So the vehicle kind of buzzed me around the turn, and after they turned off, I just kind of went like this, like, you know, you couldn't have waited. And within, I don't know, 3-4 minutes, the same vehicle came by me on the straightaway up here and buzzed me again, and drove up to this dirt road and parked the vehicle. And by the time I was coming up the stretch, he was standing in the middle of the road on the yellow line. So I basically had a couple of choices. So I tried to just evade him, and he tackled me off into the side of the road. So, yeah.
He tackled you off the road?
He tackled me off the bike as I was moving, yeah.
Tim, tell me the story of the day you got hit.
Well, it was our first day back after being away for a week camping in PEI, and I was just doing my usual commute to work. An off-duty police officer was driving in the opposite direction and saw me and saw the truck behind me, and was kind of paying attention to the truck and thinking it's quite a nice truck. And then all of a sudden I was hit from behind by the truck, so it kind of struck me right on the left side of my butt cheek. I was launched about 15-20 feet into the air, and then came down quite hard on the shoulder of the road. My first memory was about a week after that. My injuries really were from where I was struck. My left thigh, my left femur, kind of ripped a new hole in my left buttock, and kind of came out that way and was shattered at the top. And then up here I had, 2 depression fractures in my skull. Both my eye sockets were fractured. My jaw was broken in 3 places. I had a broken scapula, 2 cracked vertebrae, 3 broken ribs. Both my lungs were punctured and collapsed, and I had a ruptured spleen as well. And there was obviously there was a bleed on my brain, and my brain was swollen and so on, so it was a brain injury, and yeah, I was not in a happy state.
Okay, good. Okay, Kyle, tell me about your accident.
So it was near the end of November. I remember because it was the start of exam season, and I was coming off a night shift. It was Thursday, a bit after 8. So I was coming through this intersection right over there, and I was going straight through the green light, and I rolled up and the green light just turned green. I was like, sweet, green light. So I proceeded through, and then the next thing I remember, I saw a car right below my left knee. I flew over the car and landed on my knees in the middle of the intersection. So I had what was called traumatic bursitis in both of my knees. And then I woke up in an intersection with someone holding my head. And then my memories are really scattered from there on out. So in the emergency room, I was diagnosed with a fractured left humerus right below my shoulder socket, which meant that they couldn't do anything with it. They had to put me in what was called a gravity cast. So basically my arm was up like this, with it hung down, and the gravity kept my bone in traction. So I had to sleep sitting up for about 3 weeks in a chair in my living room. I was dealing with a concussion at the time as well, going into exam season, so that was a whole bunch of fun. Trying to reorganize my life around how to get to school and how to wash my hair and, still get good marks. And on top of that, I was working 2 jobs at the time, so I couldn't work either. So then it became a struggle to pay rent. And I had to go back to work early against medical advice to even get money to pay rent. So it was a big ordeal.
I think when something like this happens, you think about all the what ifs, and we're definitely behind the curve in Halifax. There's often this conversation about cyclists versus motorists, people who drive cars and people who ride bikes, and I just don't really see it that way, because at the end of the day, if you're riding a bike, you're really vulnerable. You're on two wheels, you're on a very small thing. You know, you're competing for road space with vehicles that are thousands and thousands of pounds. They have every bit of power to knock you off and do a lot of damage, and infrastructure to separate cyclists from motorists as best as we can is, I think, essential for Halifax.
My takeaway is the fact that we're very vulnerable out here. I was by myself, but we all have families, we all have jobs, and I mean, he could have killed me. He could have gone to jail for a long time himself and taken himself out of his family's picture. So it's just, it's a scary feeling, but at the same time, it surprises me. And the thing that was most disappointing is that when the RCMP told me that, really, he said, if these guys hadn't come down and witnessed the entire incident, he said it would have been just your word against this guy. And he said, you know, it may have gone to court, but there was no guarantee.
I haven't cycled on the road since, and I have no real plans to.
How are you alive?
I don't know. Really, thanks to a lot of excellent care. I mean, it's very lucky that an off-duty police officer witnessed it and attended to me like immediately. And there was also a man, Mr. Darcy, I think his name was, who came out to help. And then paramedics, superb, emergency care at the QE2, and then incredible orthopedic surgery as well. If you go to a big city in a different part of the world, then whilst I'm sure there's still conflict between cyclists and other motorists, I think it's a bit more accepted. Whereas I think here we are in Nova Scotia, and right here, it's not exactly maybe rural Nova Scotia, but you're out of the city, then I think there is more of a bit less understanding of cyclists particularly being on the road, you know, when there's trails and so on that they could be riding on. I think that's how a lot of people view it, that perhaps they shouldn't be on the road, you know, they're a lesser road user. So.
There's a lot of talk about people sharing the road, and even right now there's a really big investment in cyclists in the province, whereas at the very foundation of what makes us a country, our law, there's no protection for me codified as a cyclist. Really foundationally, we need to talk to drivers about sharing the road with cyclists, we need to talk to cyclists about sharing the road with drivers, and it needs to be built from the bottom up. Infrastructure is a great thing, money invested is a great thing, but where we need to change is culturally. We need to accept that people aren't always going to be in cars. They're going to be busing, they're going to be walking, they're going to be pushing children in strollers. People are going to need to use the roads to get around. And the more we understand each other's uses, the safer we're all going to get.